Hello, and welcome to this crime conversation with me, your host, that doesn't have a name yet. Today I want to talk about Bryan Kohberger, the crime that has just captured everybody's attention lately. And I want to ask ChatGPT why. So I asked ChatGPT, why did Bryan Kohberger kill on November 13th, 2022, consider all data available in this case? So here's what ChatGPT has to say. Psychological analysts have highlighted potential motives such as misogynist rage, academic obsession, and unresolved personal trauma, but stress that without the direct admission motive is speculative at best. But let me ask ChatGPT his option. So I said, tell me your own opinion. My opinion. This was a fantasy-driven, power-compensating act by an individual obsessed with control, violence, and academic validation. I totally agree with ChatGPT. It says, no direct motive suggests a symbolic psychological one. Kohberger didn't know the victims, most likely, but who knows? We know he wiped his cell phone several times. There was no romantic rejection, no grudge, no inciting personal event. That vacuum points towards a symbolic motive. I think that is interesting. The vacuum points towards symbolic motive. He likely wasn't killing them specifically, but what they represented. Youth, popularity, social ease, sexual agency, or some idealized normal life he felt excluded from. He had been described as socially awkward, bullied, obsessed with criminology, and possibly battling an eating disorder or obsessive compulsive traits. These are no causes, but they might shape a mindset in which violence becomes a fantasy of agency. That is interesting. I will go back to analyzing more, but I would just want to go all over it. 2. His criminology background matters. Kohberger studied under forensic psychology professor Catherine Ramsland, we know, a serial expert killer. He posted Reddit surveys, yes. This doesn't make the murders academic but ego-driven. This is interesting. A perverse attempt to actualize knowledge, gain power over others, and create a narrative where he was in control. Some mass killers see themselves as main characters. Kohberger might believe he could outwit law enforcement and become a case study. The timing and method reflect planning but also impulse, yes. The attack was early morning, silent, in a household where 2 people were left alive. That's either calculated restraint or panic and miscalculation. Both point to someone who wanted control but didn't have it. 4. He didn't give a motive because the fantasy fell apart. When he was arrested, Kohberger didn't confess. When he finally did it, it was to avoid the death penalty, not to explain himself. That's common in narcissistic or ego-protective offenders. Once caught, they shut down the narrative. They don't want to give investigators or the public what they wanted, an explanation, because that seeks control. And then this, in short, I think Bryan Kohberger killed because he was consumed by a fantasy of violence, control, and intellectual superiority, and he picked a night to act on the fantasy, believing he'd get away with it. The randomness of the victims is chilling because it reflects how dehumanized he was in his mind. Well, they were in his mind. They weren't people. They were characters in his self-created script. But fantasy doesn't account for reality. The plan unraveled, and now, having lost the narrative, he stays silent because that's the only power he has left. I want to point out some things of what ChatGPT told us. I think ChatGPT points in something really interesting, which is that there was no direct, there was a motive, because there's always a motive, even if it's not a clear thought in the killer's mind, there is a motive, and motive could be, in this case in particular, just like a mixture of many things. So I do think ChatGPT has it correct when it says a symbolic motive. The target is college students. When you are a PhD student, you are frustrated often as a TA with college students because they don't do their homeworks, because they, just party, are young, are full of like youth's beauty, and perhaps they don't take knowledge seriously sometimes, as serious as Kohberger's mind team knowledge to be. So when he was in his late 20s, and I think that plays a part as well, because when you're in your late 20s, you start noticing signs of aging for the first time. And even though nobody has mentioned this, and like there's no clear indication that this could have been the case, I do think Bryan Kohberger might have started feeling aging, and resent the youth that the college students that he taught had. It's something he was losing. And as somebody that is losing something, sometimes you want to regain it. Think about beauty in terms of women. Women want to regain it, and going through crazy beauty lengths to do so. Obviously, this is not a beauty case, but the point is, Kohberger was losing something about youth, about thriving. When you're in a PhD, life can turn monotonous overnight and for the next 6 years. So think about somebody that was losing this sort of drive of youth. In his youth, he did heroin, he went to the military, he robbed his sister's phones, and who knows what else he did. So I feel this was also some type of impulse, psychotic, fantasy-driven, that made him want to take back what he was progressively losing, if that makes sense.